And we're live. Welcome to the first ever Stay Gold Gun live stream. Got my buddy Cagney here. And we're just going to see what, I'm not sure what to talk about, but hopefully people in the comments will have something to say. I guess I was potentially going to talk about future video ideas for full-length videos. And that's the plan. How's the audio sound? Welcome to the Stay Gold Gun live stream. I feel like Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands because you're not allowed to have guns on live streams. So just me and the camera. Yeah, I should have grabbed something. I'll talk about these little figurines on the table. They are reproduction banks. They're reproductions of antique banks, little coin banks, and they would shoot a coin into the mouth of the bank. They're kind of cool. All right, here we all are, gang. I like it. I know everyone that's in the stream. So we're doing well. I'm going to actually give some people some wrenches. Jano, good to see you here, man. Dad, I would give you a wrench, but I don't know what you would do with it. Hello, my love. All right. I feel like it's a funny group we got going here. I think Cagney, he's eating a basket. What should I talk about? Hey. It's good to see people in the chat. Yeah, I guess I wanted to talk about potential ideas for the channel, future videos. I was thinking about making a video on the PE90. That would be a fun one. And also the Spaz 12 and the SIG P210 or the M49 were the top ones on my list. More kitten. He's climbing around. Cagney. He's probably chewing on wires. It's going to be an empty live stream in a minute once he chews through them all. I really wish I had more stuff planned. It's just me awkwardly looking at the camera with nothing going here. I wonder if knives are allowed on YouTube. I thought it'd be kind of fun to go through my knife collection, because that's just kind of a thing that wouldn't come up normally in videos. There have been a few in the shorts that I've interjected just for some flavor to the video, but I haven't really gone over them at all. Not really the point of the channel. I guess while I'm yammering, I'll talk about some guns that I hope to add to the channel soon. Hey, welcome, Joanne. We got quite a group here. There is a Mark 760 that's available that I could probably pick up, and it's a clone of the Smith & Wesson 76, which was a clone of the Swedish K, because Sweden wouldn't sell the U.S. any arms during Vietnam, and the Navy SEALs were using the Swedish K. They contacted Smith & Wesson to see if they can make a clone of it, and they did. Unfortunately, I don't think there are any they're transferable machine guns, but I don't think there are any semi-automatic only versions of the Smith & Wesson 76. So Smith & Wesson stopped making it, but then this company, MK Arms, started making replacement parts for the Navy SEALs. And from the parts that they were making, they decided to build some semi-automatic only versions, in addition to full auto ones that they sold to the civilians. And it's kind of one of the best options you can get if you want a Smith & Wesson 76 or a Swedish K. There was also a company called Special Weapons that did a run of them, I think maybe from MK Arms parts. But hi, Mom. I'm literally talking to my mom. So I have an opportunity to get an MK760, which if you can't place the Smith & Wesson 76, this might not help, but it's the submachine gun that Charlton Heston has in the Omega Man, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And also, it is the submachine gun that the Joker has in The Dark Knight, the Heath Ledger Joker. It's the one that he's shooting towards Batman when he's crashed the semi-truck. I don't know if that is interesting or not. Anyway, because it was in the Omega Man, and the fact that it is a version of the Swedish K are the main reasons why I would like to get one. And then it would be very cool to be able to do some stuff from those movies in a video. Like, there's a famous line in the Omega Man where he's driving around and there's no one else that he knows of left alive on Earth, and he hears a phone ringing from payphones, which that's a throwback in itself. Banks of payphones. But he yells out, "There's no phone ringing. There's no phone." So whenever I can throw in a Charlton Heston impression with my feeble impression abilities, I try to do it. So that would be fun. I guess another thing I could talk about is, like, it's funny because a goal for the channel initially was to have the ability to get my special occupational taxpayer status to be able to build machine guns. And I just thought, I mean, realistically, buying machine guns is so expensive. And when you, I mean, the thing about buying a machine gun for me is I like unique, interesting weapons. And if you're going to spend, like tens of thousands of dollars on something that's full auto, you kind of want it to be the most common thing possible so that you can very easily get parts to, because the chance of them wearing out is more likely. So, like basically, I'm not that excited about buying a machine gun because it's going to be something super common. And even though it's fun to spray bullets, it's not. I've done it enough now that it's not the be all end all for me. Like, it's really expensive besides the upfront cost of paying the tens of thousands of dollars, but then also then you're dumping all the ammo that much faster. And then realistically, if you're trying to hit anything, you're going to miss after quite a bit. So anyway, that's why I haven't gotten into the full auto realm. And then now with YouTube's policy change, anything full auto is going to be 18 and up. So it's really bad for the channel. Like if you have millions of subscribers and you're like, I don't know, like rich or something, or you have sponsors for the channel, so you're not worried about ad revenue. I mean, at the same time, I think if you put up age restricted content, it's going to limit the amount that YouTube is going to promote your content. And so I think even larger creators are probably going to shy away from showing machine guns on their channels as much because I think it really detriments your channel growth to be able, if you put out that age restricted content, and which all machine guns are now going to fall into that category. So I had the hope that I could get the license to build and buy post-dealer samples of machine guns as an SOT and then put those guns on the channel. But now with the policy changes, it seems less desirable for sure. And it's too bad too, because I have a PKM parts kit that I would really like to build in full auto, but it doesn't seem worth it to get the license to build machine guns just to build one machine gun. And then you have to like maintain that license to be able to continue owning it. So yeah, I'm just not sure what I want to do. Like I definitely want to put more full auto content on the channel because it is really interesting and I have an opportunity to get some cool stuff. But if it tanks my ability to grow the channel, it doesn't seem worth it. So I think, I don't know, maybe if I put that content behind a paywall, like a members only video or something, there might be a better chance of getting that full auto content where it doesn't damage the channel, but it also is something fun for people to watch. I know that Ian McCollum started putting all of his full auto stuff on his own website because, and he doesn't even monetize his channel. I think he probably did it in a way just to like redirect people to his own platform. For one, I guess because then you're in control of your own content. For anyone that doesn't know who Ian McCollum is, he is the guy behind Forgotten Weapons. And I don't know, it really makes sense, I think, to put that content, at least not in your main feed, because I I had a video that was inaccurately classified as 18 and up, and I wasn't able to really appeal it, and it really tanked the views and the growth of the channel, which I am hoping to recover from. But it just was a stark reminder that the 18 and up thing is I mean, for me, it was just like a channel killer in a way. So it's going to have to be something that I really watch out for going forward, to make sure that my content is something that is not age restricted. Trying to think what else I want to. I guess an exciting thing to announce. I mean, I don't know if it's exciting or not, but I got I pre-ordered in January a SIG 553, which is the more modern, shorter barrel version of the SIG 550 series. JDI, who brings in all the modern Swiss stuff, had a pre-order for short barrel and long barrel 553s. The short barrel ones sold super quickly. I wasn't able to get one of those. That was my desire, because it has the removable flash hider, so you could add a suppressor to it. But they sold out of the short barreled one, so I got a long barrel just because I wanted a 553 so much, and it's a good investment that if down the line I had the ability to get a short barreled one, I would be able to sell the long barreled one, and it would be, I'd probably end up making money. And also, just in case I wasn't able to get a short barreled 553, I bought a 552 Commando barrel with the removable flash hider, so that if I had to, I could find someone to replace the 553 barrel with the 552 barrel, and then I would have the barrel profile that I wanted, and then also have the ability to add a suppressor. So that was in January, and I'm hoping before too long. I imagined that it would have shipped already, but I haven't gotten it yet. So I'm hoping that I can get that SIG 553, and then I can make a video on that, because that's a really cool design. It's really interesting because it is one of the most modern SIG rifles from Switzerland, and it's a product improved version of the SIG 552 Commando, which is probably more iconic, just because it's been in more movies and video games, even though the 553 is the superior version. The 550 is or the five, sorry, I got distracted. Even though the 553 is the superior version, the 552 is a little bit more famous. I mean, in the future, if money was no object, I would definitely like to get every version of the SIG 550 series. The 551 is another very cool version. There's a short barrel and a long barrel version of those. feel like I'm just rambling about SIG rifles, which I guess is, you're kind of getting an idea of what my inner monologue is like. This is the stuff that I think about. So, yeah, so that's something coming to the channel. Oh, another thing that is, I'm talking about a bunch of stuff that's is also my outer monologue. Another thing that is down the line for the channel that I'm excited about is Smith Machine Group, who made the DPM that I have, and they make the DP28 series in semi-automatic. They had done a run of RP46 conversions, which, if you're not familiar, the DP28 came out in 1927, 1928, and then they used that for a good long while into and through World War II. And then in 1946, they built a conversion where you add a element to the top of the gun that replaces the pan magazine with the ability to belt feed. And Smith Machine Group had made a run of these conversions that they made to like copy the original, and they sold out a few years ago. And at the time, I didn't have the DPM, and so I was sort of tempted to get one at the time, even though I knew that I wanted one down the line, but I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get one. So I missed that opportunity. But then recently they announced that they were going to do another run of them. And so I have a pre-order in for that conversion. So it makes it so that you add this element to the DPM, and then you can use PKM belts on it, which I already have PKM belts, and I have the PKM belt loader. So I would really be in good shape if I could get that rolling. It'd be really fun to have. So I'm really hoping that I'll have the ability to have that on the channel soon. I'm not sure what the prospect is of when they're going to get those shipping. I'm trying to think if there's anything else coming up. Oh, well, there's something that I'm really excited about, but I mean, I guess there's no one really watching anyway, so I'll just announce it as something to say. Gosh, it was now 4 or 5 months ago. I won a French Hotchkiss Universal semi-automatic submachine gun on Gunbroker, and it's in the lengthy process of getting transferred to the dealer, and then it'll process to me. The process to the dealer has taken all this time, and this is another reason why I'm not super excited about buying machine guns. Is like, it's frustrating enough to have spent the amount of money that I did on the Hotchkiss Universal, but to have, if I were to have spent like 4 or 5 times that amount on a machine gun and then have to wait months and months for the government to allow me to have my own property, it would be really frustrating. It's been frustrating enough dealing with this. I'm really excited to get it though. The Hotchkiss Universal is one of my favorite guns in history. I really like things that are unique in how they operate, and the Hotchkiss, how it operates is not that exciting. I believe it's just simple blowback, but it's a totally folding gun. The magwell folds up, the stock folds, the barrel actually retracts into the receiver, and so it makes this compact package which you can deploy fairly quickly. And to me, it's one of the most interesting designs ever. I love folding guns. I think it's really interesting to try to package something in a folding design like that. And anyway, hopefully before too long, the ATF will approve the transfer to the dealer, and then I can go and get the transfer going to me, which it's a Form 4 transfer, so it should go kind of quickly the way that suppressor transfers have been going. So fingers crossed on that. That's another future thing for the channel. Other than that, I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that I want, but I just don't have the money to buy it right now. So there's, since I'm just talking to talk right now, there's a Barrett M107 available on a forum, and it has I think it's a Schmidt and Bender scope on it. It's like a $3,000 scope, and then it has the Bohr's Barrett optical range finding system, or whatever it's called, built into the scope, and like it's $13,000. The M107 is usually right around 13 or 14,000 on its own. So the addition of the optics would make it a really good deal, and that's something that would be super cool. But it's just so much money. My lovely wife has reminded me to mention my next full-length video, which I would say, I'm not gonna make any promises, but I think I could possibly get it out by this weekend. And it's another full-length video on the M249S. I put out the one before, which is kind of funny because Forgotten Weapons hadn't had a video on the M249 or the M249S. And so when I put my video out, I copied the way he does his thumbnails, so that, I guess, sort of so that people would like get tricked into thinking, or like if they search for Forgotten Weapons M249, then my video would come up and they'd be like, well, okay, I guess I'll check this out. And then it becomes very clear when my face pops up instead of his that it's not Ian McCollum. But I thought I did a kind of an interesting job doing sort of what he would do on his channel. And it's interesting because in the last 2 days, I think he released his video on the M249S, and the thumbnail was almost exactly the same as the one I made. And we even used the exact same image of the M249 for the thumbnail. And I feel like I did a pretty good job with the resources that I had. Like, he had an inside guy at FN that he talked to that gave him a bunch of information for like how the development of the semi-automatic version came about. So it was obviously an advantage for him to be able to have that inside man feeding him information that I couldn't get my hands on. But for the information that I had available, I felt like I did a pretty good job of talking about it and doing the field strip and how it worked. And anyway, so it was fun doing that. But when I put the video out, I hadn't even, I'm going to finish, Jabroni Mark, I'm going to finish my thought real quick, and then I'm going to answer that question because it's a great one. So anyway, when I put out the M249S video, I hadn't even shot the gun yet. So we did a shooting video, and I was really impressed by it. And it was a super fun video to make, and it should be coming out very soon. So how long have I been collecting? It's been 21 years now. I got my first gun, which was a Maverick or Mossberg, my Maverick. Is either a Maverick by Mossberg or the other way around, Model 88 pump action shotgun. And I bought it at Walmart because I was just there with my buddy and we were actually looking for BB guns. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't think they have any more BB guns. And he was like, well, they got these over here. And I was like, no, those are real guns. And then I was like, well, I'm old enough to buy a gun. I could just buy one of these right now. So I bought that shotgun for like $160, I think. And then I didn't know that. I don't want to. Yeah, I'll admit embarrassing things. I didn't know that if it said it could take 3-inch shells, that it would also take 2 3/4-inch shells. So I drove to a bunch of stores to find 3-inch shells, and I bought these 3-inch steel shot nitro magnum shotgun shells that were super expensive because I didn't know what I was doing, and so that's what I did. And then after that first experience, which also involved me driving around with it in my back seat, listening to George Thorogood and the Destroyers' "Bad to the Bone" like on repeat on a cassette tape. I was kind of hooked, and I bought 3 more shotguns in like the course of a few months, which I don't know why I got on this big shotgun kick, but the next one I got, I think, was just a New England, the NEF, whatever, single shot break action 12 gauge, which I think was like $80, and it included like a box of shotgun shells, which I hated. That's the first gun that I ever sold too, because I don't know if it's just because it was so light, but it just kicked terribly. I hated it. So then I got a Norinco side-by-side coach gun, which was pretty fun, but I ended up selling that one too. And then I got a Mossberg Persuader, just because I thought it looked cooler than the Maverick. So it was a weird start to my collecting, but yeah. So it's been 21 years, and 5 years in is good. It's funny. I took a long break. Like I bought 7 guns ish in the course of a small period of time. I got a Savage 99C lever action in 308, which was great, but I ended up selling that one too. And I got my first AK-47, or AKM, I guess technically, was recently on the channel. My SAR-1 from Romania. I got it at a mercantile store, and it was $350. And that was a good deal at the time, but it was not an uncommon price to pay for see, this was during the 94 to 04 assault weapons ban. So anything that was pre-ban was super expensive. Dude, that's so sweet. It's great. I had trigger slap when I first got the SAR-1 for a long time, and I didn't even know. I was so a noob, I guess. I didn't know what the deal was, and I just put up with the fact that sometimes my finger would go numb when I fired my rifle. But I just replaced it with a Tapco G2, and it eliminated the issue. So yeah, the SAR-1 is great. Ban era AKs are a really good deal. Like, I mean, especially because most people don't suppress their AKs anyway. So having a flash hider or a muzzle brake doesn't make it that huge of a difference. So if you can find a ban era AK at a pawn shop or an old gun shop, or wherever you can find one, they're really one of the best deals around, especially Mac 90s. Like, people don't think of Chinese products as being high quality, and obviously modern Chinese like trash products are not high quality, but they made those AKs in the same plants that they made their military AKs, and they really overbuilt them. Um, I mean, like, before it was cool, they built all their Mac 90s on 1.5 millimeter receivers instead of 1 millimeter, and their barrels are almost like heavy profile barrels, like even on just the standard Mac 90. Um, and then even like I even had, I think I've had two Mac 90s where the fire control group almost looked like it was color case hardened, which is really cool to have that kind of purplish, rainbowy look onto the fire control group, even though no one sees it. I mean, I saw it. I thought it was cool. So that is a recommendation that if people are asking me for an AK recommendation, that's usually what I say is try to find a band arrow one if you're not super interested in putting a suppressor on it, because you can really find deals oftentimes that you wouldn't be able to find on more modern production stuff. And then also modern production stuff, in communist countries, from communist countries, we got a bunch of parts kits and rifles that were really cheap for a while. And people kind of got the impression that the AK was a cheap to produce rifle, but these rifles came from countries where the government had complete control of all the finances. So they didn't have like a bottom line, like, I don't know, like any commercial firearm company, like where they need to make sure when they're setting up tooling for building a run of rifles that the amount that they're going to make back on those equates to the amount that they're putting into the tooling. In those communist countries, they didn't have to worry about that because they controlled the means of production. This is not a good thing, but it's why some of these products that they turned out were really high quality for the kind of like less capital than you would imagine situation that they had set up. And it's I think a lot of US companies really realized when they started trying to make their own AKs that it's really expensive. Like, you can't just set up an Izhevsk plant in the US real quick and then just start churning out AKs like they did. Like, it takes a lot of tooling. And then I'm sure they didn't have access to the actual technical data package that you would need to like build everything to the specs that they had been built to, like, which if you're trying to get started in building something, you really want that technical data package, because it's kind of like, it's more than just like a blueprint. It's kind of like a cheat code in how to build the rifle, because they did all the tests on the heat treating and all that stuff for the metal components and all the tolerances, and it makes a big difference if you're trying to build something that's a good quality, to have all that information. So it's so funny because I have a M249S video that's almost completely edited. I just need to do some like voiceover stuff and little tweaks to the edit. And that's a gun that I've already made a video on. And then I started recording more footage for the Madsen because I got the tripod, and the tripod is so interesting that I was like, man, I wish I'd had this for my full length video, because it's just such a cool design. It's the coolest um, tripod design I've ever seen. It has a soft recoil mount built into it, so that when you fire, the gun like slides back where it mounts in the front, and then also where it mounts in the rear. It slides back on a little track, and it makes it like so easy to just keep hitting the same place over and over and over again. Like, I have a tripod for the UK-59, and I'm trying to think. I have one for the PKM, but obviously I haven't used that yet. I feel like I have one more tripod. Maybe not. Anyway, so the difference between the Madsen tripod and the UK-59 is like night and day. Like, you can get the Madsen on target and then just keep pulling the trigger and it just keeps hitting the target. It's pretty incredible. But on the UK-59, the tripod recoils with the gun so much that you kind of have to adjust it like almost every shot, unless you like really like staked it down and put sandbags on it. So I got that Madsen tripod and it was in rough shape when I got it, but I've cleaned it up and got it working with the soft recoil, and also has a remote trigger thing where you can fire with a little handle on the tripod. It's really an amazing setup. So I started recording stuff for that, but then I was like, dang, I'm now recording a second video for another gun that I've already done a video on. So I really need to branch out into, I mean, obviously from the shorts, everyone knows that I have a pretty extensive collection, but I've been currently working on videos for guns that I've already done videos on. I'm also thinking about doing more videos that were just kind of like talking to the camera, but with like a ton of editing, so it's not all the ums and ahs that you're hearing right now. And I can write jokes in or something. I want to do more videos that are just based on collecting and like tips that I have. Like, I guess I'll just briefly go over an idea that I had where, if you're lucky enough to live in a state where you can still do private transfers, which thankfully I do, and I do currently, but I had lived in a state where I couldn't. Excellent. Red, blue, purple. Thanks for commenting, dude. So I've done so many private transfers for such a long time. Like, basically I was on 2 forums, 2 different, I don't want to say the name necessarily. Basically, I was on 7 different sites where people would post their firearms for sale, and I would just watch them all day. Like, I would just, whenever I had a down minute, I would just check and see if anyone had posted anything interesting and if it was a good deal. And if it was within probably 300 miles of where I lived, I would go make the deal. And I have some tips. Like, if you find a good deal like that, you need to really jump on it as quickly as possible, because there's so many people that are like me, I think, that are watching these things obsessed, that if they see a good deal, they're going to jump at it too. So from the time that it gets posted, you need to message them immediately. That's a super good question, dude. I'm going to finish this thought, and then I'm going to answer that red, blue, purple question. So you need to message them as quickly as possible, and then try to make the meeting to do the deal as soon as possible. Because I'm going to go on a slight little tangent real quick. I have also done a thing where I messaged a person that had a really good deal on something, and someone else had messaged them before me. And I did the thing that I always dreaded would happen to me, which is that I said, you're selling this for a little less than you could probably get for it. I'd be willing to offer you a little bit more money than what your asking price. And it's probably kind of a jerk move, but I guess it's like all's fair in love and war sort of thing, where it's like, I felt like it was worth it to get the deal, to pay a little bit more money and trying to weasel the guy that got there first out of it. And so you have to watch out for that, because I'm sure there are other people that would do the same thing. So the question, the best deal that I've ever gotten, is sort of complicated. I'll just say the number one best deal that I ever got was on my Dragunov. I was really lucky to develop a relationship with some really cool people on forums that I was on, and it became a thing with my buddy that I met on a forum, that he was in the gold business, and he would get all these deals in of like guys that were like prospectors from Alaska, and then also like people selling like scrap gold and whatever. And in his dealings, he would get guns and ammo in the mix. And so he had listed like 4,000 rounds of ammo, like 7.62 by 39, 223, and 54R. And the prices that he had were all super good. And so I happened to have the cash ready, and I messaged him and I was like, hey, I'd like to buy your ammo. And he's like, okay, which ones? And I said, all of it. And I went down and met him at his office and bought all of it. And it was a good deal. And then from then on out, he would always message me when he got stuff in rather than list it on the forum, because the majority of the time that I was just ready to buy it. So he messaged me one night and he goes, hey, I have a client that is interested in selling a Tiger Hunter. And I was like, oh man, if he means a Tiger, like a Russian Dragunov Tiger, this would be incredible. Because at the time, I had never seen one in person. I'd been looking for one for over 15 years. And I go to an insane amount of, and I'm comfortable saying it's an insane amount of gun stores and gun shows all around the country. So the fact that I had never seen one before in person is, I think, pretty remarkable. So that was what the guy had. And he said, I asked him, well, how much does he want for it? And he said, just make him an offer. And it's one of those things where it's like, sometimes I kind of feel bad where I don't want to offer someone, like, I don't want to rip someone off, but I also feel like if you want to get the top dollar for your item, you have to put the legwork in. You have to do the research and see how much it's worth. And because, I mean, if you go to a gun shop, they're going to give you 50% or less if you sell it to them. So basically, at the time, Dragunovs were selling for, Tigers anyway, we're selling for probably around 5,000, 6,000. And I offered him 3,000 because that was the last one that I had seen posted that I didn't get to buy was for 3,000. And I sent the message and I was like, man, I hope I didn't insult him and like screw myself out of this deal. And he came back with, would you do 3,100? And I was like, yes, absolutely, I would. So that was incredible to get one of my dream rifles for one of the best deals I've ever gotten. And it being the first time that I ever seen one in person was pretty amazing. Another crazy deal that I got was on the PE57 that I have. And I'm going to give some information out here that I was kind of like keeping to myself a little bit. The one that I have is a parts kit build. It's not a, the receiver isn't Swiss, so it's not worth the like 20 grand that the real ones are worth. But it is a valuable, and it has been valuable for a long time. And that was another deal where just from a connection that I had, because a guy that I worked with was a FFL. He had been contacted by a friend of his who was a major collector, like basically, I guess to convey the idea of how big his collection was, he was going to sell off a third basically of what he had. And he had it all written out on a piece of paper, like, you know, like legal rule paper. And it had 2 columns on each side. And it was basically front and back completely filled with guns that he was selling. So it was an insane amount of guns that he had, because those are the ones he was selling. And so he had 2/3 more on top of that. So it was a really weird deal. Like, he had some very cool stuff in his list. Like the AG42B was one that I got from him. I think I got that for 900. But then he had really common stuff like a Waffen-Works. No, not Waffen-Works. Anyway, one of those like middle grade builder AK-74s. At the time, they were selling for like, I mean, like $600 or $700, but he had like 1,100 that he wanted for it. And that was like a common thread where like stuff that he had that was really rare, he had it really undervalued. And then like more common stuff that he had way too high of a price. So, that's so great. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth throwing offers out, as long as they're not like, I don't want to insult, like, it's not so much of like in offending someone or insulting them, but like, you don't want to burn bridges with people. Like, I'm going to finish this idea, this thread real quick, and then I'm going to go on another thread about burning bridges. So one of the guns that he had on the list was a P57, and I was like, well, this can't really, because the price he had on there was $2,600. And I was like, well, there's no way that this is like anything but maybe like a parts kit or something, or he has the wrong name down or what. But so I told him the 2 main things that I was interested in were the P57 and the AG42B. He also had a Beretta AR-70, which I should have gotten. And he also had I'm not going to say actually this one, because I don't have I got to keep some secrets, because not that like everyone in the stream is going to be like, oh, I need to buy one of those now. But anyway, he had rare stuff. So I said, I want these 2. I showed up at his house with the cash, and the P57 was just sitting there on the table, and I couldn't believe that it was actually a real thing. And so yeah, I got the 2 best deals I ever got were the Dragunov for 3,000 and the P57 for 2,600. That was a crazy thing. So for offending people, you never know who you're dealing with. Like, some people may have seen it on the channel. I have a Finnish M39 with an Arctic birch stock, and it's a really pretty rifle. Like, it is not the most valuable, but it goes in my like gun wall of like my favorites, just because it's so beautiful. And the dude that I met up with was like a major M1 carbine collector. He was just a major collector. And I got to learn that just from like talking to him when I was doing the deal. And he was really cool where like when I showed up, he was like, "Oh, I didn't describe the bore as well as I should have. Like it's a little darker than I thought. So I'll drop this amount of money off the price." And I should have just been like, "Cool, like that's great. I'm into it." Like, but instead I said, "Hey, would you take like this, like sort of a trivial amount of extra money off of like the price?" And he said, "Sure." But like when I don't know, I talked to him later and I definitely got a vibe that he kind of like wrote me off a little bit because he was like, "Dude, like I already gave you a good deal on this thing and then you like had to get the extra 25 bucks or whatever or whatever the deal was." And I feel like I kind of burned a bridge with that guy where I would have, if I had a better relationship, that would have been another opportunity to like get in on cool stuff and like, um, and in a world like, and then too, like, not even just like buying stuff, but like having access to, um, people information, like because he was a big M1 carbine guy and I was in the market for one. I have one now, and I think I don't know. Mine is just like a mix master or whatever, which is fine because I just wanted it for a shooter. But um, if I had access to him as this really knowledgeable collector, to be like, hey, when I'm looking at something, I'd be like, hey, because like M1 carbines are almost like AR-15s, but like with the amount of extra parts swapped around and whatever. But like it's so much more important to for value to have matching, at least matching era, because like parts got swapped out in the military so much, but like it, like don't have a Viet or Korean War um, era sight on a receiver that's from the World War II, or you know what I mean. Like so if I had had him as a resource to be like, oh, I'm looking at this M1 carbine, will you take a look at it and tell me if it's like correct at all, or so if the value is where it should be. And because I saved 25 bucks or whatever it was on that deal, I lost that opportunity to have that dude tell me all this great information. So where like I am really, I don't know, like cheap, I guess, or whatever. Like I not so much to the point where I'd step over the gate to save the hinge, but pretty close. Um, I feel like it's worth it sometimes to keep relationships cool to pay the little bit of extra money if it is like not a, if it is an insignificant amount. Um, for the C&R thing, I have never done it just because I hate paperwork. I'm like terrible at it. And I guess part of me always wondered if I should get an FFL license, even though I'm not really interested in selling guns, especially now because it's so funny because people will comment like, "Oh, how much for this or whatever?" And I'm like, I don't sell anything. So like, and then also because it's bad. Like YouTube doesn't want you selling guns on YouTube. Like, I think the people that do it kind of like, kind of like sneak around a little bit. Like they're kind of just promoting their gun store, not necessarily promoting like, oh, I'm selling this gun for this amount of money or whatever. But the fact that you have a gun store is kind of like your channel is sort of like a backdoor way into selling your stuff. So I think the C&R thing is not that much money. And then the ability to, I mean, yeah, the ability to get it shipped to your house is cool. And then there's more to it. Like sometimes I think you can get a discount. I'm not sure. Like sadly, the market on C&R stuff is so much more depleted than it was in the past that, but you never know. Like Royal Tiger Imports got all that stuff in from Ethiopia or whatever. And I think a lot of it's kind of in junky condition, but they got some really cool stuff in. And if you had that license, you could get it shipped to your house. So I guess I don't know. Like I haven't done it because it hasn't seemed totally worth it to me. And obviously I'm super into milsurp stuff. So it seems like it would be worth it to me. I can't read this message. Stock, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a whole ball of spaghetti. I don't know it's a whole other can of worms. The like firearms as an investment thing, like I mean, it's just, I guess it's kind of obvious. Like, this is not financial advice, but buying firearms, and especially, well, not all firearms. That's the thing that I think some people have a misconception about, and I'm glad that this came up because guns hold their value well, but they don't always appreciate in value well. Like the best example I can say is if you buy a Glock for $550, it's going to be worth 450 basically forever because they keep coming out with new Glocks. And unless you have some like really special rare run, which I don't think they do a ton of rare runs, it's always going to be worth around $450. And so it's not appreciating with even inflation. But if you buy something that was only made for, like, I'll just say the Sight Spectre because it's a video that I put out recently. And it's a good example too, because a Glock is a way more practical firearm than a Sight Spectre. And like in any realm, like it would make way more sense if you were buying it just as something to use as a firearm. A Glock would make way more sense to buy than a Sight Spectre. But the Spectre, because it only had that limited run, and the fact that it is in some like iconic, mostly video games, it's in movies too, but it's mostly the fact that it was in GoldenEye and the fact that it was in Black Ops 1 really kind of concreted it in pop culture as a iconic thing. And so since there's a limited number of them that have been made, and there is kind of an increasing number of people that think it's cool, the value just keeps going up. So it would be a better investment. And there are things that you could do, like I'm trying to think of something. Well, like a K31 is a really good example of, it's not that uncommon, but there aren't any more made, and you can get it for, I mean, almost as cheap as a Glock. But as years go by, a K31 is always going to get more valuable than the Glock is going to get. So, I mean, that's kind of apples and oranges in a way, but just in the idea of buying firearms as an investment concept, like if you buy things that are like, I call it like off the rack, like when you buy a suit that isn't fitted to you, it's just one that you're buying off the rack. It's never going to be as valuable as something that was made. I mean, not actually, custom made is not good. It's like kind of like hot rods. Like you don't want to like hot rod your AR-15 and put a bunch of parts into it, because unless it's just like your dream, you know what I mean? But like as a financial decision, it's not a good idea, because if you want to sell it for like what you put into it, you have to find someone that wants all the exact same stuff that you put into it. So um, uh, unless you wanted to sell all the parts, but then like parts don't hold value the same way that firearms do either. So basically, the overall arching point is yes, and like you said with the thing at the 1022, buying a standard 1022, and even I feel like almost potentially, I guess it's apples and oranges, but like if you buy a special edition 1022 is one thing, but like if you were to buy a 1022 that has a metal trigger guard or like more metal parts instead of plastic parts, it's not necessarily going to be worth like way more money, but you're putting your money into something that has a limited amount of like there are more limited amount that are around still. And for people that are into classic designs, having less plastic on something is always a bonus. So um, uh, that's another element is if you can buy an older version of something that is kind of like rack grade, and that's a great thing to find at a pawn shop too. Um, it's incredible the things you can find. This is I think is sort of an interesting idea. Is that um, at pawn shops you find guns sometimes that are purchased. I don't want to sound insulting, but because I feel like I'm sort of in the same category. Um, you can find things that people pawned because they don't necessarily make the wisest financial decisions, which I've definitely, like say I had a gun come up for a super good deal. I'm going to buy it and it's going to go on a credit card and I have to pay the interest. But the idea is that like ideally the deal that I got is going to be worth the amount of interest that I had to pay because I didn't have the money at the time. So like um, people that sell their stuff at pawn shops sometimes have it kind of a wild and fancy free idea of like how they're going to spend their money and they can get some cool stuff. Like the coolest, I guess this is like one that got away. One of the coolest things I ever saw at a pawn shop was in my hometown, and it was a Wieldy and 475 Magnum, which if you're not familiar with that, it was in Death Wish 2. Gosh, I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't know exactly which Death Wish. I think it's Death Wish 2 for sure, and maybe 3. And then it's also in one of the Dirty Harry movies, maybe Magnum Force. The Wieldy is an it's an incredibly interesting design. It's the reason I didn't buy it when I had the opportunity was because people had said, oh, it's like, it's really rough around the edges and like, it kind of hurts to shoot. And the ammo's like not made. So you have to like make your own ammo and it's a very impractical pistol, but I could have gotten one for $1,600 and they sell for at least double that now if you can find one. So that would have been a really good thing for me to buy. And I think because, well, a backstory, I had seen it in that same pawn shop like years before and then it was gone. And then years later it was back. So I feel like maybe the guy that pawned it was able to buy it back, but then also got back into financial hardship and then sold it again to them. So anyway, I had an opportunity twice to buy that and I didn't buy it. I don't think I had the money at the time, but still that's another thing paid off, and especially in the amount that it's worth now. That's so great that your brother's the pawn shop by the casino. That's like that could be like people that are pawning stuff because they want to gamble. You see a lot of junk too, but I mean, like you see junk everywhere. Like that's one thing that I've learned, I guess, is you can't judge a book by its cover on gun stores. Like, especially like really nice ones, that look like a cool hip store, have like nice lighting and whatever. A lot of times they just have like really generic stuff that's kind of overpriced. And then if you find it a pawn shop, like especially like there was a row of pawn shops. Um, I don't know, I can tell people that I'm from the Pacific Northwest, and there's a row of pawn shops by the Lewis McChord Air Force Base or Joint Base that on Gravelly Lake Drive, that there are at least 4 pawn shops in walking distance of each other. And I used to go all the time because they got they got for a really good deal one time, and another one had really Galil, or not Galil, but a foul. They had one in there for a long time, and it had. I really like the furniture on the Israeli foul, probably the most of any of the different variants. And they would just get cool stuff in, and like the prices were like okay. Sometimes they'd be good, sometimes they'd be bad, but because our service members are great, but they don't. I mean, the whole meme about using your recruiting money to buy a Dodge Charger or whatever is it's not based in just memes. Like it's a real thing. So they don't always make the greatest financial decisions, and they have sometimes really cool interest in firearms. So a bunch of pawn shops in a Air Force or military base like proximity was a pretty cool spot. I know that I don't know if I want to. I don't know. If you live near a military base, sometimes hypothetically you can get good deals on ammo from guys. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. That's a really good point. Red, blue, purple. Really, yeah. Like I would say more often than not, the more kind of hole in the wall, even like pawn shop level gun store is likely going to have cooler stuff than you would find in like a big, nice store. Like I'm trying to think of an example. Like I would say it's not always the case, but a lot of times gun shops that are like a part of a range usually have a pretty meager selection of firearms that are like cool. Like usually I don't want to have a hypothesis about why one would necessarily not bring cool guns into the range, but I feel like you generally just see new guns, which you can just buy new guns online, like, and get it shipped to a dealer for way less than you can usually find it, especially at a range. Range gun shops always have the highest prices on everything, especially ammo, which makes sense because like if you show up to the range and you're like, oh, I need more ammo or whatever, it makes sense that you're going to be right there. So your brother bargained with this one old guy in town and they took $100 off if you brought them a banana pudding. Banana pudding's good. You could probably make that same deal with me. That's really cool. But yeah, I mean, another good deal that I got was at a pawn shop in Kent, Washington, and it was just at a pawn shop, out of the way place, and I walked in and I saw that they had a Valmet M71 on the rack, And I was like, hey, can I take a look at that Valmet? And then I don't know, I got the look of like, oh, hey, this guy actually knows what this thing is. And so he, and the price on it was $1,500. And at the time they were selling for closer to 2,000, like 2,100. And like they can be more nowadays. But I guess it was on a consignment, and a guy had brought it in, and he was firm on the price, which he should have been. Like 2 years ago when he brought it in, it was worth closer to 1,500, but in the interim, it had gone up by like $500. And so I went in there, and the guy, I'm looking at it, and the guy's like, yeah, we're just a little pawn shop. You're not going to get someone who's just going to walk in and drop $1,500 on the table and walk out with this thing. And I was like, well, today is that day. So I bought the Valmet for $1,500. That was another, I mean, not like a screaming deal, but it was a good deal. And it was just because I was in town, passing through. And whenever I drive through a town, I check and see if there are any gun stores. So that was a really good score. But those are kind of more few and far between. Like finding good deals at gun stores, especially if it's like your local one, if they tend to, what you really want to find is like a gun shop where they have a good steady stream of like regulars that go in and like sell their stuff. Because like I think that's the thing with a lot of gun stores is they just don't have anybody that sells their stuff to them. So everything's new. And like I said, new stuff you can just buy online for cheaper, and the old stuff is what's interesting anyway. So it's not like, what you need to find is a cool gun shop that has a lot of guys that sell their stuff to them. And ideally, like there's a place by me where I've gotten a M1 carbine, a Webley Mark 6. I got a Valmet M76 from them. They had an AR 180 that I kind of go back and forth. So anything that I had an opportunity to buy a lot of times for cheap, it's hard for me to pay like twice as much money on it. So like forever, AR 180s were like less than $1,000, and now they're selling for more than 2,000. I mean, even though that was like 10 years ago, it's still hard for me to like want to spend the money on it now, even because I could have gotten it for cheaper. I don't know, it's a weird mentality that I have. That's really great about that casino pawn shop. It seems like a freaking gold mine. Now I'm going to like search pawn shops near casinos to try to find those deals. Well, I was going to go for an hour, and it's been an hour and 20 almost. So if anyone has any extra questions, let them rip, and I'll try to answer. And if not, I might just hop off and say, thanks for tuning in to the first Stay Gold live stream. It was awkward, but it's also, I mean, this is my favorite subject to talk about, especially collecting and buying stuff and deals and stuff. Like that is the dream for me. Like, well, I give people time to type. I want to tell a story where when I got my FN49, which is a Luxembourg model, it was at a store called Gun Bow. and well, that's what it said on the sign. I think technically the store was called Gun and Bow. And they just had an FN49. It's like a one of 20, maybe 30,000 that were ever made. And I was like, yeah, please, I'll buy it. So I bought it, and then I don't know what the deal was. Maybe I had money issues or something. So I sold it. I had bought the bayonet and I sold it, and bought it for 900, and I sold it for 1,000 with the paid 100 for the bayonet. So I sold it, and I kind of regretted it. And then I don't know, I think it was years later, I got a message from a dude on the forum that I was on, and he said, I think I have your FN49. And I was like, oh, is it a Luxembourg version with the refinished stock? And he's like, yeah, that's it. Dude, that's so crazy. And he's like, would you be interested in buying it? And I was like, this is the weirdest deal that I've ever had happen, where like I wasn't like they sought me out because they had seen my previous post when I sold it on the forum. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I'll sell it to you for $900. And so basically I got it back for what I paid for it. Plus then I got the bayonet for free. It was a really weird, cool deal. And that was just another thing that I found at a really random off the wall place, I think in Puyallup. Gun and Bow is not there anymore. That was really cool. Well, red, blue, purple, everyone that commented, I'm really stoked you guys tuned in, all my friends and family that watched. I appreciate you. Hopefully in the future I can do this again and maybe have less ums and ahs, but I really appreciate all the great questions, and I really appreciate everyone tuning in. This is my favorite stuff to talk about, and so I guess I'll just sign off now. Thanks. Thank you, brother.